My name's Renita Bonavides. My husband Joe and I, we've been attending school board meetings since July of 2021. So we're trying to make sure that we get some information out. We've been highly invested in this process now. And we've learned as much as we can to take our information. And you will see, just a quick, restrooms are back there. They do have drinks available in the bar area. Questionnaires are on the table, so if you can give your input before and after, if you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate it. No names are required. We're using information from MPS's website. We use it from their presentations that they've done. We also have had personal communications with people, so we're trying to get that information there. We also have michiganschooldata.org, which provides a lot of the trends and charts that we're using. And the slideshow will be posted online on our website, so you can get that information on our flyer. Just a little bit about me too. My parents are retired school teachers down in Genesee County, and I have other teachers in my family, so this isn't because I'm against students or school or education or anything. It's more about the accountability and whether we're actually voting on what we think we're voting on. We've heard a lot of different discussions about the buildings over the years, and we've watched the presentations. We've attended multiple presentations that MPS has been doing in the community and also the school board meetings. And some different topics that we're going to be covering tonight. We're going to be covering the age of the facilities, building utilization, school choice, the pre-K, which is the Great Start Readiness Program, also the enrollment trends, academic achievement, and proficiencies, as well as what it's going to cost the taxpayers. We'll also consider what taxpayers' dollars and interest are being used in this bond, and then why this election is important. Because this is no 4-year election, this election is going to impact this community for the next 33 years. Frequent arguments we hear. We'll hear the buildings are old. They aren't designed for today's learners. That we need modern functional desks and chairs. Our playgrounds have drainage issues and the kids come home muddy. And these are things we've actually heard at the presentations. If we don't put these items in the bond, we will have to take them out of the general fund, which affects teachers and parapros. And we've been told 85% of the budget is for instructional student support. This is a flyer mailer that many of you may have received from MPS. So we will be using that as some of our talking points this evening. Northeast Middle School is 75 years old. That's one of the facts that the community knows. And it's needing to be replaced, maybe. So again, this is one of theirs. Talks about aging facilities, teaching methodologies have evolved and improved. And it goes on. The average age of our building is 64 years. The next two buildings that are older, other than Carpenter, we have Plymouth and Midland High that are both 73 years old at the moment. Just keep that in mind if 75 becomes the new cutoff. This is a presentation, a slide that was given back in December of 2023. It was a presentation from Martin Mallow. They gave information. They gave us 3 scenarios at that meeting. And you will see the scenarios here. The one with the kind of teal blue, that one is the one that is projected in this bond, which is to do the replacement now, and then we've absorbed the cost for the next 25 years or so. The other one you have is the purple in the middle, and that line is to do some replacements now and repairs, upgrades, and then we wait until about 2052, and then we decide where we're at with that facility, if it needs replaced, and we have the cost at that point. Then the yellow line is to reinvest at different points along the way, and again, that one in 2047, we would look at replacing the building. So those were 3 different scenarios that were presented in December of 23 at the board meeting. The situation that we look at with that is that We were told later that in 2015 it was determined that that building should go offline in 10 years. So therefore, minimal maintenance was done on that building, and therefore now it looks like it needs to be replaced. However, if you've noticed in the bond and the different series that are being presented, that building's not shown to actually go offline for another 9 years. So they will do more repairs along the way. And also that December 2023, when they told us there were other options for Northeast, those other options were not presented to the community. You were only given 2 options, and for any of you that actually went online and voted or gave your input on that, there were about 1,200 people that did. And that was to either do A or B. We either replaced Northeast and got a new elementary, or we combined the high schools and made one large campus and rearranged all the grades and stuff at the other schools. 2024 though, we began hearing, nope, Northeast has no option but to be torn down. It's end of life now. And that what changed in less than a year from we could potentially extend it to 2052 until it, or else it needed to come down now. We're not sure, but that was the different narratives. Again, Joe and I sat through the board meetings, so we've heard the different discussions about Northeast. So is it replace it or refresh it? Those are the options. Again, this is a shot, you can go look on MPS's own website. This is out of their documents about Northeast, the Barton Mallow study. Scenario 2, the initial cost is $84.4 million, cost over 25 years is $144.3 million. Scenario 4, which was to update, initial cost was $36.6 million, cost with interest over 25 years is $62.7. So there's an $81.6 million difference. The option is we can always reevaluate in 10 years after doing the work because they're 9 years anyways from this. Scenario 4 was never presented to the public as an option. So again, where are we at with Northeast, and is it a situation where we could have reassessed as we got further down the road to determine the needs of the community at the middle school? And we've also heard at these talks about the HVAC and the differences in cost and how much more energy efficient it is. This is also in that report, and it really shows you we're talking $20,000 a year of savings between upgrading the current versus what we would get in a new building. This is a little, you can't read it, that's okay. When we were told to trust the data and only look at MPS's website, one of the things, I'm newer to the community, I've only been here 13 years, so I don't know when all the buildings were built. So I started looking, and when I looked at the document that was just filed with this bond, the 2025 3881, it showed me that Northeast was built in 1972. So I was like, wait, I don't think it's that new, because why would they be getting rid of it? So we went back and looked at some other documents, and then it showed it was much earlier. So I found 3 sources of buildings, build dates. They were all different except for 3 buildings, which again, we're trying to trust the data, and that was what we were finding when we went online, so just curious. So if 75 years is the new norm, like I mentioned, Plymouth and Midland High would be the next 2, because they're 2 years younger than Northeast. So can we really afford to keep doing this and paying for new buildings? And this is just an example of a building down in Grand Blanc where I grew up. I attended this building, Perry, when I was in 6th grade. That building's 104 years old, still in use today. At one point, the community, after they experienced a downsizing in 1974, they shuttered that building and it sat there for 20 years. Mid-90s, they opened it back up. It's a magnet preschool now, and my grandchildren actually attend there. So, if it's the new norm, and we're gonna tear things down at 75 years, Midland High is 73 years old, but they're gonna put $43.9 million in it to remodel and upgrade it. Is this something we're gonna be doing with this bond, that in a few years they're gonna come back and go, now it's old and we need to tear it down after we just put all that money into it? And what is the end of life benchmark? Should it be because we've maintained our buildings and we can make them last a lot longer? Or is it just a date on a calendar and we go at 75 years it needs to go? So Hood Northeast have received the same funding and lasted for another 25 years. Something to ponder. School choice is another topic that we've come across. Talk about space utilization. We've gone to the presentations. They tell us about how to utilize the space in our elementaries, in our middle schools and high schools. In this the current school year, we actually had school choice. They opened up 296 openings at the elementary schools. Those utilization numbers, even the buildings that were now at 100% had openings and allowed students into them. So Woodcrest opened 46 seats. That's 7% of the capacity of that building. So would they really be over 100% had they limited the number of school choice? That's a decision that the board and the school does when they're looking at capacities. We understand the need to have the money to run the school, but if they're overcrowding schools, are they really looking out for the interest of our students and putting them first over the dollars that they're gonna generate by overcrowding the classrooms? And further, Jefferson, which also was over 100%, they were the other one, has unlimited 7th and 8th grade openings. So again, is that affecting our ability to keep closer to that 85% they say is the ideal? So this is their utilization chart. You'll see on the right, it'll show what the current utilization is, and you'll see Jefferson's at 103, Woodcrest at 101. And so they tell us that's the target. So if that's the target, why are we allowing school choice to push us past our target? And you'll also notice in the corner, district preschool. Pre-K is a goal. So is the overcrowding by design through school choice? Is it allowing us to take in more students for the money rather than making sure our class sizes are that are best for learning for our students? And why do schools over 90% still have seats open for school choice? So, and a reminder, school choice is optional. It's not a requirement. It's convenient for parents to move kids in and out of the district. But if our school is at capacity, should we really continue to take in additional students within the county? And then we even have kids outside the county. So this is just a little chart that shows how many school choice were allowed in each of the buildings. There are some grades that they actually do say we're full and they won't take more. Other grades, they're still allowing people in. And this gives you an idea. The orange bars, that's the number of kids leaving our district through school choice. And the blue bars are the number of kids coming into our district through school choice. So we were told that this is pretty much a wash, but we're not really seeing the wash on that chart. So, but that was what we were told at one of the presentations. This breakout, can't read real well here, but tells all the different school districts that are enrolling from outside of the district. And then this one shows how many are enrolling, I'm sorry, the other one was coming in. This is enrolling out of district and going to ESA, there's 205, but you'll still see there's over 1,000 students, so about 750. This is just a quick, and again, we'll have all these slides online, so you can go back and read them more carefully. So this is just talking about how many kids we had at each building that were school choice, some within the district, some outside of the district, some are in the county, some are out of the county. So again, you've got Woodcrest, they're allowing out-of-county students, but we're at 100% capacity. So again, is the goal to keep us at 85% like their goal is, or is it to get as many dollars as we can and crowd the schools? And this is another comparison I'll let you look at later, just explaining the different seats. And in the bottom one, I actually took the number of school choice seats and pulled them out of the numbers. And we actually sit pretty close to our 85%. So that's why we're asking, is that an issue? And this chart shows you the green lines. That's the number of students in district in each of those years. And then the blue are the ones that we brought in through school choice. So you can see the green line's pretty close to our 85% orange line there. And when we add in the school choice, that's what pushes us up closer. And this is also from that December 2023 meeting. Shows the before numbers and what our capacities are and our after numbers. Kind of interesting because the after numbers, after we spend all this money, it's actually going to put several buildings in the 70% utilization, which on another one of their documents, it shows that I was given, was below 75 to 80% may indicate inefficient use, potentially leading to consolidations or closures. So, which way are we going with our utilization? And are we getting what's promised? Currently, the buildings are at about 93% utilization on average. And will the new Northeast have the same capacity? We don't know the actual capacity projections because they tell us what we got off the state was not the valid number to be using because it uses the wrong ratio of students to parents. So it's very difficult for us to actually know what we're getting. Are the students actually going to have smaller class sizes? What's missing in the MPS presentation? MPS is not showing the public the utilization numbers after this money is all spent. They don't really discuss actual class sizes the parents should expect after the public commits to paying the debt for 34 years. They have consistently said the only place to cut funding is the teachers and the parapros. And we have become very top-heavy in the administration at MPS as well. Why not cut there? This is an example of where our budgets have gone in MPS. When we started attending, we were hearing it was in the low 80 million range, which you can see was about the 82 to 88 million. This meeting in March, they just approved their budget, and it's now at 116 million. So the budget's gone up 42% since 2019, and we've seen almost no change in enrollment. So our per student cost is going up. And we'll talk more about the budget later. This is a sample of what we've done in terms of our administration. Just recently, from 2023, we were paying $924,000. Right now, the budget that was just approved, it just went up to 1.4 million. That's a 55% increase in 2 years. And you'll notice that we also added a new assistant superintendent position. We've had a superintendent with 3 associates for a number of years now, and now we've added a 4th. And this gives you an idea of what our red line there is doing in terms of cost per student. We're spending way more, it's going up. Our attendance is pretty level, and the proficiencies are not doing well, and we'll cover that again later. So at this time, I'll turn it over.
I'm going to help cover this part, going over Great Start Readiness, which is the pre-K program. This yellow box is from the mailer that hopefully, or maybe you got. It talks about preschool and early childhood trends. First, pre-K is not a state required program or law. And moving these littles, as the school board calls them, into the elementary schools will, 1, require a coordinator to be hired for each of the 7 buildings. Number 2, require certification of all 7 buildings for the preschool program. And 3, keep these children from a larger group of similar age children for learning and play, in contrast to how they are being taught now in the same building, which they're all in Carpenter pre-primary center. And 4, it will put these littles in much bigger and older, and allow them to be with much older kids to be influenced when they're up in the K through 12 buildings as well. Still can't hear me.
A little louder.
That way?
Yeah.
Got it. I'll just pick up where I left off, sorry. But for instance, like on bus rides, they would be mixed in with K through 12 students. So right now, Carpenter Pre-Primary Center is where there's already a preschool program, which is within Midland Public Schools. And they're in this building that was once an elementary. It's 99 years old. And we're being told it needs to be torn down because it's 99 years old. It has fireplaces in it, but maybe, is this an issue for preschool student learning? They've been using it, so it seems like it was licensed to be able to handle that. This bond proposal will now though expand pre-K offerings. So the goal is to have 3 to early 5-year-olds within this program. So why can't Carpenter continue to be used as the central pre-K school? Why must we add 2 classrooms, which is what is proposed in the Form 3881? It shows layouts for buildings with multiple classrooms in each of the elementaries and the new elementary building proposed to be built, instead of those classrooms being used for K-12 students. So, and also, just a reminder, MPS will now need a pre-K coordinator and certification for all of those 7 buildings. Further, this building, this Carpenter Elementary building, Carpenter Pre-Primary building, same thing. Why can't this building, if the bond passes, be sold to generate revenue for the district? Taxpayers instead are expecting to pay $663K to demolish this. It's a historic building, and that's if the bond passes, but it's still usable space. The East Lawn property, for instance, after the 2015 bond was sold for $650K, and the building was torn down, so that was empty property. And what could the building have sold for and save the taxpayers in that demolition cost? We won't know. So is the real reason the district will not sell the Carpenter building, or any of the previously torn down buildings, to keep them part of the Midland history? Is it because they don't want competition for charter schools that could purchase it, or anyone else to continue to use it? So, as you can see, we're trying to force pre-K space into these elementaries, for what I've said already. So this came down from the governor, who's trying to get 75%. Her goal is to get 75% of 4-year-olds in pre-K, and ultimately 3-year-olds too. Just so you know, more money per pupil is given for pre-K students, more than the K through 12. So you see the numbers there on the second bullet. So is moving these pre-K students out of Carpenter and into all of the elementary schools creating the need for this new elementary school? By the way, just a reminder, the district is not legal, well, I don't know if I said this yet, but just like school choice, the district is not legally required to offer pre-K, and taxpayers are not legally required to pay for the building space. Yet, here we are, and that's what they're asking us to do. On another note, pre-K, this public pre-K, public funded pre-K, will cut out current private and parochial preschools. So there are several tuition-based preschools in Midland. Some of them don't want to participate. They are, I think, allowed to participate in this program, but it requires changing their program, and they don't want to, so that may cause some of them that don't want to participate to have this extra competition, and who's going to pay when they can go for free. Then there's others that are welcoming the program, like Memorial Presbyterian, and they're allowing, well, they have to change the program, but then they're allowing the students to come without cost for tuition, but they strip things like religion because they're going public. So MPS seems to want to choose to offer pre-K because the public likes the convenience of free preschool and dropping off their students, the preschool students, along with their elementary students at the same building. But is that really what we should be striving for? So now let's look at enrollment trends. This is part of presentation material from MPS about the bond. It's showing that there's a change in population going north and into the northern area of the county. And on the left, the wording says 600 plus elementary students reside north of US 10. Well, in another area of the presentation material, on the enrollment trends, as you can see in the red box, it says 600 pre-K to 5, which is 5th grade students. So are they including kindergarten or pre-K in these numbers? It's hard to tell. A little bit more on that. So what is the actual number of pre-K versus K-5 in the area that's north of US 10? 600? No, maybe it includes pre-K. Maybe it includes anything under kindergarten. So it could include all the age under there. So the buildings the taxpayers are required to build and the students, sorry, I lost my train of thought. The students we are required to educate are K through 12. That's the state public education system. That's mandated. The 600 number reflects a much larger range of ages than K through 5. So the current year 1st through 5th graders will be gone by the time the 1 through 5s go to elementary. So that number may not be 600 K through 5 students by the time a building comes online north of 10. So again, pre-K is not required to be in elementary buildings. So is the number really 300 or is it 600? This committee went and asked, and the response was that there's no difference. So from NPS standpoint, they don't see the difference there. But we're told that enrollment numbers could only be K through 12 by Michigan reporting standards. So there's some confusion there, and is it intentional to muddle the numbers so that the need looks higher? Now let's look at MPS student enrollment. MPS and Michigan reporting can only show K through 12. Pre-K and ESA are not included in those enrollment numbers. And is it growing at the rate projected? What they show in their legal 3881 form, which they say it's growing at 2.55%. So this is the trend of MPS enrollment from their presentation. It starts at the year 2000. You can see the drastic drop. There was a drastic decline starting in 2005, but in recent years it's more leveled off. So this graph starts in 2010. So some of that decline is still happening at the beginning of the graph on the blue line, which is MPS, and the state trend is in orange. So even compared to the state, MPS has consistently lost more students in terms of percentage, which is what this graph's Y chart is, the Y-axis is. And the gap between MPS's drop and Michigan's dropped MPS dropped even more drastically. Michigan's has been a more consistent drop. But even in recent years, there's been some small rebounds, but the overall trend is downward, even towards the very end of the graph in recent years. So the last chart was created for Michigan school data, but MPS did what is their school enrollment trends? So they did a fairly cheap $500 population study, but their narrative ignored facts for the following: the business climate, will it be stable, or downsizing to factor? The U.S. and Michigan birth rates are below replacement rate. We've had the fewest babies born in Michigan since the 1940s. I don't know if they're factoring in for growth in homeschool or alternative schools or charter schools. Even online charter schools, they have a lot of school choice students opting to use those. Or even growth in private schools or expansion of the current ones. So Midland has held steady in the last few years, where most of Michigan's declined, but their estimate still shows that they will see a 2.55% increase in the next 5 years. Now, how did they get to that number? I'm going to call it myth or fact on that one. They claim the 2.55%, but when I go out and look on the My School data, enrollment numbers for the last 2 years, which are part of the green block on the left side of this table, or chart of this graph, 2 of their numbers are kind of inflated. So 2023-24 and 24-25's enrollment is like 1 to 1.5% higher on their projection study. And those are numbers that they fed into these projection models to predict what goes out in the yellow, where it's going up. So the projection study used data with questionable accuracy. And those inflated figures for the last 2 years affected how this trend looks. So it's probably overly optimistic from when you look at the data now. And the black line is probably more in line with where it would be. It's not a study, but based on where it's been and where it's going, that's what we would predict. So are they going to stay about the same or decline, it seems? All right, now let's move into academic achievement and proficiencies. So, sorry, the graph on the bottom is very, very faint. But on the top, which is important, is how MPS presents their student scores. Now, they do have this as part of a whole presentation, but when they reflect back on it at any point in the year, they like to refer to the fact that they're the top 3% in the state. 3.5%, 3%, depends on the two subjects there. And they're very quick to point that out. But just so you know, this number only represents one metric and one grade. This is 11th grader SAT scores. So they're comparing their 11th graders to the rest of the state. And if you didn't know, Michigan's ranked 41 out of 50 for education in U.S. World News Reports, which is a source that they gave us to use. And so the left graph is hard to see it, but there are state trends, NPS trends, and then an elite school group trends on that graph. So maybe you can look at it later. But they're all trending down. So we're happy to report we're 3% because we're the top of the bottom. Now, also in that presentation, these are their slides, up on the top is, starting at grade 3 up to grade 7, is reading scores, ELA scores. So I blew up the 3rd through 5th grade there because there's a bigger gap in those areas where the scores for elementary are quite a bit, the proficiency for elementary are quite a bit lower. So they failed to address looking at these younger elementary ones, or making them a priority, I would say. But 3rd grade is important. Why? Because 3rd grade, and even they say this in their meeting, is that it's the crucial year when students make the leap from learning to reading to learn. So it's the point where you want to make sure that they're able to read to move on to the next grade so that they can start doing the other subjects with efficiency. So MPS 3rd graders in 2023, 48.4 were proficient. And now they went up in 2024 to 51.4. So, yay, they're more than 50%. But 4th and 5th grade proficiency, it's not like they jump in 4th grade and they're suddenly reading. So the scores in these grades are fairly low, and then there's also a wide range between the different schools in the district. For 2023, Adams was at 53, Siebert was pretty high at 62, and Central Elementary was only at 44. And that's the newest building with all the modern architecture and modern learning spaces, and they even moved this advanced learning program called the Alps into that building. So that's even, should shift their score a little bit, you think. But here's the question: is it possible to do better than these 50 range for reading for 3rd grade? Yes. Webster Elementary in Livonia is at 93, and Hemeter Elementary, built in 1938, in Saginaw is at 82. So the age of its building, is it a factor? So comparing to the state, MPS is in blue, the state's in red. We're better than the state, trending, we're better than the state. But only half of the 3rd graders can't read. And the gap is getting narrower. MPS is getting closer to the state. So, a little closer look at Central Park Elementary, which is the most modern. It was built after the 2015 bond passed, and it has the modern learning environment, because that's what's in the flyers. That's what their goal is. And this is supposed to support educational excellence. Their NPS marketing states that academic excellence calls for upgrading these learning spaces. So, they took two, I left the state and the overall NPS trends on there. They're kind of faint. Actually, they're all kind of faint, sorry. But the point of this is that they took two groups of students from older elementary buildings, they moved them into Central Park, and the scores kept trending downward. So there was no significant shift because they moved them into this newer learning space. It wasn't subtly better for them. And they're actually, this elementary is very close to the state level. So they're the lowest. So a look back at this graph, which was already at once. We already went over the red line, it's been going up. Now we went over enrollment, it's just the darker blue line. It's declining still slightly. And then you have in green the third grade reading proficiency, and in yellow high school college readiness. Both going down, like sharply going down. So this is the data, you can go look at it on our website, you can look at myschooldata.org, this is the source of this data. So, also, there's a class of students, 31, that gets 31A funding, and these are economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. So they get extra support. There's about 36% of students within Midland Public, 36% that are economically disadvantaged, and there's about 16% with disabilities. So there might be some overlap in those categories. But MPS does get an additional $5 million for them. They get free school and summer school, but are they doing anything in the district to break the generational cycle of some of these students? Okay, this is from the mailer. They talk about academic excellence, so kind of in summary. Is academic excellence really dependent on the learning space, or is it more dependent on the teaching quality? As I showed you, Central Park Elementary was designed, well, I don't have a picture of the building, but Central Park Elementary was designed with the latest and greatest in learning space, with great furniture and award-winning architecture. But has their student population excelled beyond other schools in the district because they suddenly got a new building? Did placing the ELPS program in that building impact the test scores? If it did, it wasn't that significant because it really didn't shift it much. And will all of the upgrades to these other buildings in the district really add to the academic excellence? Or is it just all about appearances? Want to go to the slide?
Could you tell me what else is?
Advanced learning.
Oh, gifted, okay.
It's a gift, yes.
Thank you.
In fact, if you'd like to talk about that afterwards, I wouldn't mind, I've got a daughter.
I just fell off
Okay, so far we've covered reading proficiency, age, school choice, the grades pre-K, et cetera, and enrollment numbers. And now it's time for the money. What's gonna happen and how much money is involved in this bond proposal? My name's Joe Bonadies. I've been in Midland for 36 years. I got brought in by a large company and served my time and have gotten out. If you're a numbers person, I'm gonna really annoy you because I'm gonna go fast. You can have the numbers all you want, whenever you want. If you're not a numbers person, don't worry about it. All I want you to do is see the trends. Really quick history for those who might not have been here for a long time. 1994, Proposal A, trying to level the playing field among all the schools. We had more of an industrial base than many places, so we were able to spend more on schools than other places, and that rug got pulled out from under us. We had a sinking fund in 1994 to start to pay for the extra things that we were used to. Sinking fund is a pay-as-you-go facility, so it's not a debt. They collect money and then they can spend it. So Midland is proud to say we haven't had a debt in years. That's true for decades, because the sinking fund was not a debt. This is when I first started noticing MPS, because the very first thing they did was put a U of M quality football field, turf in, and all the facilities, and it's like, wasn't the buildings that were first, wasn't all the, it was like, sports was first. It was like, my first letter to the editor was for that one. They passed sinking fund 2. There were a few other things which were questionable from my perspective, and sinking fund 3 in 2013 failed. Some of us cheered. So MPS was unsupported with extra money for 2 years. They didn't buy any buses, they didn't do a bunch of things, and they floundered. So that's why they came back at us in 2015 for the bond for $125 million, 15-year bond. And they did their thing for 10 years, and now we're back. And now it's $285 million for 25 years. So again, proposal A took the high local taxes out, which impacted us, and we could not live by the state's per student allocation. So, of course, they did the workarounds, which was sinking funds and bonds, and some places do both. Still, to this day, not everybody switched from sinking funds to bonds. Sinking funds tended to come first. What else happened? 2010, student population dropped, the income dropped, they shut down 5 elementary schools instead of 4, and again, they fell behind. We got the bond, so we paid to demolish 4 of the 5 elementary schools, and in every bond series that we had, there were 3 bond series, they bought buses. That would become important later. And now we got the 25 bond, they're going big, 2 new buildings in the midst of economic uncertainty, from my perspective, and more buses with every series. Quick aside, buses last about 6 years. We are and have been financing buses with each of the series. We are financing a 6-year consumable with 25-year money. You could buy a lot of buses with the interest we're paying on the buses that aren't even there anymore. Technology, cables, servers, routers, 10 years. We're paying it with 25-year money. Chromebooks, we throw them away after 5 years. We're paying for it with 25-year money. And that's what the last of the Series 3 money from 2015 was used for, was to buy the Chromebooks. Ballpark, we're wasting $30.5 million on interest to pay for things that aren't there anymore. This is a quick update. Where are we today, before the vote? This is the 2015 bond. We are now getting to the point where we start to get relief from the 2015 bond. We are entitled to that relief because we have paid down some of it. And this is all data from their form 3881. I had to go request it with vigor in order to get it out, and once it came out, they started talking about it more freely. So what is on the bond? This is the official bond language in yellow. It doesn't say in there they're going to build this school, elementary school. It doesn't say they're going to do a new middle school. It doesn't say any. This is all the generalities that they're in there. They have said at recent meetings that if things change, they can do something different. They're not required to do what is in the glossy marketing that you've seen. So you're basically writing them part of a blank check in order to do this. I mean, they will do parking lots, they will do asphalt, they will do security. We'll take questions at the end of
I'd
this.
just like to ask you, would you read that out loud, since I don't think most people can read it from there, but so people understand what's not in there? There's a question mark at the end.
The Midland Public School proposal shall Midland Public Schools borrow the sum not to exceed $285 million, and issue its general obligation unlimited tax bonds, therefore in one or more series, for the purpose of, quick, general obligation unlimited tax bonds. That means you're responsible for it. If you own property, you own a business, you're responsible for it. So it's actually like writing a mortgage. Don't pay your taxes to take your house. All right, erecting, furnishing, and equipping new school buildings and school support buildings, erecting additions, remodels, including security improvements, furnishing, refurbishing, equipping, and re-equipping school buildings, acquiring, installing instructional technology and instructional technology equipment for school buildings, purchasing school buses, acquiring, preparing, developing, equipping, and improving playgrounds, play fields, athletic fields, facilities, driveways, parking areas, etc. It's a large description of things that will happen. Again, general obligation, it's our responsibility to pay this back. They're gonna put it out, and it's really, I keep going back and forth with the school board on this. It's 3.9 next year, or the first year they charge you for this. They like to say 3.25. It's a 3.25 increase because they are taking the discount that you are entitled to in the 2015. That's my perspective. And it's gonna keep going up to, I'll show you that one in a minute.
4.95.
Yes. Anyway, they're only required to tell you what the millage is going to be the first year. Everything else is an assumption. There are a series of assumptions in here. Like the local economy is going to grow at 1.65% per year based on the taxable value. They haven't achieved that in 7 of the last 10 years. They are going to get a 4.75% interest rate. I have no clue what the interest rate is going to be for Series 3 and 4. It could be significantly higher. If it is, guess who pays? So right after we got that 3881 document, they put this up on the website, which is not readable. And so I broke it out a little bit, and this blue is the new bond, which is still not readable. So here's my version of it. We've got, whoops. There's today, there's the new 3.9 to get you up to 6.2. They can hold 6.2 because 2015 is dropping for several years, and then at 10 years they're down about 5, and it continues to drop. We're not really going to be at 3.25 until 2051 for this bond. It's all an emotional play to say it's only 3.25. You've seen this chart on all of their propaganda, sorry, marketing. Feels like 2.25, and it keeps going up, and you're going to be paying on this until 2058. They're going to be doing several series along the way. Again, they're going to hope they're going to get that interest rate. If not true, I can't predict the future, but to say that inflation is not going to affect the interest rate in the near term, I don't think so. The 2015 bond, as I said, was 15 years. They've extended it now for this one for 25 years. Why? Well, you stretch out the payments and the millage rate goes down. It's like buying a car. You know, what do you want your payments to be? That tells you what your term is going to be. We're going to be paying $88.5 million extra in interest because they're extending it from 15 to 25 years. That does no good for any student outcome. It's just money you throw to bondholders somewhere in the world, whoever bought the bond. But it does make it sound better. But it's your money that they're doing it for this market. You've seen our signs. They're getting to be popular around town. It says $500 million. Whoops. The number is $487,128 and $333 over 33 years. We admit it is not at this moment $500 million. We're 97% of the way to $500 million. For me, that's close enough. And if any of those assumptions don't prove to be true, it will go over $500 million. Again, the Midland tax base needs to grow $1.65 million annually. And everybody, we talk to people who rent, and it's like, we're not worried about it. It's like, your landlord is going to get hit with this increase. Your rent is then going to go up. It's just, they cannot absorb all of this. They might soak up a little, but, everybody is gonna feel the bump. We were just in Independence Village, and theirs is gonna go up $16,000. That 1.65 growth, that red is a 5-year rolling average. And notice how we spend a fair amount of time below the required 1.65 for their assumptions. So they like to talk about the part of the iceberg above ground. I'm talking about the part of the iceberg below sea level, because that's the part that's going to haunt us. The general fund balance, there's money in the system. You can see that their income in green is more than their expenses in red many times. And this blue line is their general fund, or fund balance, and it keeps going up. Let me blow that up for you. We'll blow it up for you. Oh, that blue didn't show up, did it? This account was sitting there in the 7 to 14 range over the years, and then suddenly, 2017, they started building this war chest. I'll call it a war chest. This whole section right here in light blue that you can't see is unassigned money. So they have been putting money aside and not doing other things. I mean, money can only do one thing at a time, and it's going to savings, and they're getting interest, but they're not fixing the muddy pit parking lots, putting in security, and buying school buses and all those other things that they want to defer to the bonds instead. You can say they're siphoning the money off into the fund balance. You can call it an emergency fund. They might get a better interest rate because the banks are like, oh, you've got all this extra money here, you're a great credit risk. Don't know. But they didn't do a lot of things that they say are important while they had the money to do it. So why am I here? I don't like where this train is going. Are they going to keep doing 25-year bonds every 10 years? MPS board has said publicly, we will be back. Putting a 2035 bond on top of the middle of a 2025 bond will have a higher starting point, and I'll illustrate this in a second. If they put it on a 2025 bond, they're starting at 5 mils instead of 2.95, and everything is going to put us in those elite schools they like to compare themselves to. It's like, well, we'll be up in their tax bracket in no time. Here's my cartoon. Here we are at 10 years. If we put a 2035 bond on top of the remnants of 15 and 25, we're going to be up at 8 mils. And if we do it again 10 years later, we're going to be up close to 10 mils. We didn't sign up for all of this. We're not MPS's ATM machine. We do not want to be in perpetual bondage to this system. That's what it's going to end up being. What's going to be, they've shifted a lot of things over, as I said. They're doing buses and computers and roofs and everything. Again, they're going to be back. And I've already said, this is my favorite slide. This is the ghost bus. Again, a 2026 senior will be riding on a new school bus if this passes. And his dad voted yes for this bond. Dad did not realize that the bus will be taken out of service in 2032. And the dad and his son, if he's living in town, will still be paying taxes for that bond in 2050. Every bus will be a ghost on the MPS accounting books for 19 years after it disappears. We're using long-term debt for short-lived items. It doesn't make any sense. This is what sinking funds are I have to put this in. New furniture will not fix proficiency. Easily movable furniture will allow better and improved learning and all that routine. Personally, I learned at a student desk that still had an inkwell hole in it. It was from the late 40s or early 50s. I was learning on the 70s, and my little brother was still using it in the 80s. Hard furniture doesn't cause proficiency. The new Central Park School, latest and greatest, the architecture award is prominently displayed, and they've got one of the lowest reading scores among the whole system. We are mortgaging the future. A colleague was talking about the bond with my wife, and her 11-year-old son overheard the conversation, interrupted mom, and said, "I'll be 45 years old when this is paid off." The mom was aghast because the mother's only 42. She'll be older than I will when this is paid off. This is generational indebtedness. Adding insult to injury, MPS will take a distribution from the very first bond series for at least $71,000 to pay for the election that they're holding. And they're gonna pay interest on that money for 25 years. So there's another $50,000 in interest for the privilege of being fleeced for this. It appears to be legal. I don't think it's right that they're wasting money like that. Takeaway. This is way too big. There are too many assumptions that this is gonna actually work. And the 2035 bond, if we continue on this track, will put us into the elite class of bond villages, not necessarily performances. And using this 25-year bond to pay for consumables doesn't make any sense. It's like financing a car for 35 or 40 years. I'm a sarcastic person, as you may have guessed. This is my version of the bond. All of the heads of the hydra with all of the issues that says we need to do better. And that reminded me that I'm done.
Okay, we'll see if this one's working. That one's acting like it might be shorting out. So, how important is this election on May 6th? This isn't a 4-year election, as I said. Typically, we vote 4 years. If we don't like the outcome, we wait 4 years, we get a new shot at it. This one, on the other hand, is an election that's going to impact us for the next 33 years. It's going to affect this community. It's going to affect the money in the community. Special elections, they're done this time of year, hoping for low voter turnout. Mostly absentee voters, generally the older population. 64% of the voters in this May election last year were 64 and older. There are 46,000 registered voters in the Midland Public School District. About 10,000 of them are permanent absentee, and actually they've had enough requests, it's actually about 14,000 that received ballots this time. 36,000 live in the city, 10,000 live in the surrounding townships that are zoned MPS. Previous elections, 2013 that Joe talked about was the sinking fund election. It failed. What was really interesting, if you look at the numbers that voted, 2,304 people voted no, 2,081 voted yes. 10% of the people at that time made the choice for this community and how it turned out. So 2015 comes around, 15-year bond, about 41,000 registered voters. Again, we have about 17% of the people that showed up to vote. And they made a decision for the rest of the community to be indebted for the next number of years. So this is last year's election. We had a millage renewal. Not sure how many of you were aware of it or voted in it. Hopefully you did. But what happened in that? Same thing. We had about less than 8,000 people that that election was voted on by. Again, 17.5%. 78% of those were absentee voters. So that just tells you, this is our silent majority. 37,000 people chose to sit out the election. So they allowed those 17% that showed up to actually voice a vote for all of them. And did you know that we have to pay for these special elections. I did a FOIA last year, got the information, we paid $85,000 for that special election to be run in May last year. That doesn't include the cost that they spent on the campaign to get the information out, so it was $133,000 for that election. I would love to see a change in this election, which is why we're speaking. One of my goals is to try to make sure enough people are informed and they get to the ballot and they actually cast their vote. The $500 million debt for over 33 years is just too much for the taxpayers and does not solve the core crises that are going on. And for people that say we already voted, now we've learned something, we're not sure what we should do about it, you actually can go back until April 25th at 5 o'clock. You can go to your clerk, you can get your ballot back, and they can change, you can get a new one, they spoil the old one, and you can recast it. Big takeaways, this is just too much money. Too many can't afford more taxes. People are on fixed incomes, many seniors, we've talked to several that have said, if this is the way MPS is gonna keep trying to finance things, they're gonna have to look for a different place to live because they can't afford to keep paying more. Renters, as Joe mentioned, they feel like it doesn't affect them, so they're like, oh, we don't need to vote, we don't own a home. Well, they will, it'll be passed on to them. And the small businesses, they're gonna get hit with more taxes. The only option they have is to pass it on to the consumers. We have no choice but to have to pay more so that they can pay their bills now. And we're also coming off 4 years of rising inflation. So this is a 33-year, $500 million debt on this community. And it's only about a 10-year fix because, as Joe's mentioned, they'll be back for more because they still have more issues to deal with. So, will we be at the bottom half of the local school bonds? Not likely. The building utilization capacities are not improving, even with a new elementary, because preschool, the pre-K classrooms, and the ESA, we were told they're freeing up 24 classrooms by building this new elementary. Well, in the new paradigm with the 3881 that we looked at, we actually are in a situation where you have 13 pre-K classrooms that are being put in across the elementaries, and you have another 9 that are ESA, which just about takes up those 24 classrooms. Additionally, the option to refurbish Northeast was never presented to the public as an option, but was presented in December of '23. We'll be paying on $68 million of debt long after its useful life, as Joe mentioned. And this has been a 25-year bond instead of the 15, which again, that's $88 million of interest that we're being asked to pay as a community. It's not going to benefit anybody. It's money that's going to be taken out of the business owners' pockets because we're not gonna have that money to use to buy things locally. We'll be paying taxes on it. And is all of this really needed, or just hoping it solves dropping enrollment problems? Ways you can help. We need to get the word out in the community. We don't have access to hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. We don't have access to the email list that the schools are using to blast all of the parents right now. So we need help communicating this, getting word out. We have flyers for people that are willing to go talk to their neighbors. And we also, as you know, have the yard signs. We ask for donations if you can afford it, because it'll help us with trying to get more mailers and information to the community. So, if you're able to write a check, and there's information on the flyers, and you can talk to the gals at the back. And there's other details. We have lots of campaign rules that we have to follow that we're all learning about, so. Bottom line is, our silence is our consent. The silent majority will not make things happen and change things for the better for the future of our children and our grandchildren. This election has a much bigger impact than any election this district has had. It's not a 4, 6, or 8 year impact, but 33 years. Let your voice be heard on this MPS bond proposal. If you don't vote and consent to vote, you have consented to the will of those that do. So it's critical to not be in that just 17% this time. It'd be great to see a 60% turnout. The goal is to get people in this community to step up and get engaged in what's going on. And we know we keep hearing from people that say they didn't even know about the bond because they're not seeing it. We're hoping and praying these signs going up around town will at least make people start to question and ask. So you can get more information. We have a website up, it has all of this information as well as many other details and data, so we're glad to help you find that if you need it. And this recording from this meeting will also go up online on our website. So neither the students or taxpayers will come out ahead. It's time to send this back to the MPS board, to the drawing board, and for them to show us that they are being fiscally responsible and meeting academic needs. This sleight of hand bond is a hard no. Thank you for attending.